Three female entrepreneurs turned besties share on life, business, and the journey through the mess. Join their community with every new episode for connection, education, a few laughs, and the hype energy like a bathroom full of drunk girls at a bar. It's okay.
We're your friends now.
Hey, it's Ashleigh.
Hey, it's Katie. And Biz. And today we thought it would be really a great idea to kind of check in on our progress so far, because we've been talking about this a lot privately. The unexpected impacts each of us have had since starting this podcast, from the podcast, and the feedback that we've been getting, both, as a group, which like shout out to everybody that has reviewed us and left comments,
Yes,
or that comments on any of our Facebook community page stuff. It makes me really happy to flip over into like the admin mode and be like, I get to reply to these comments. So like literally, it's like a highlight of my day. With that, and that, I guess right there, I mean, like, that is something crazy, small, and unexpected. I wasn't expecting to get that little like from that there. What about you guys? Yeah. What about like with Katie? And like honestly, the coolest thing, that the first conversation we had with putting all of this together and the unexpected positive consequences with things was inspiring other people, right, Katie?
Yeah. So I think after our first episode dropped, I almost immediately had somebody reach out and was like, I've been thinking about doing a podcast and just haven't like gotten it together to do it, or didn't know where to start. And there's so much information, you almost don't even know where to look. And you've started one. So I figured you would be willing to like give me some go-tos. And it was, I was like, wow, that's so cool. Like, and I remember telling both of you, if nothing else, I feel so great that somebody else feels empowered to like get their voice out there. Even if it takes somebody going, wow, if Katie can do this, I can definitely do this. Which, by the way, if Katie can figure out the website and the posting and all of the things, I promise you also can.
Because you say that with you, and whenever you made that announcement, I was like, oh yes, Katie's got value. With it, like, I love that so much. I love that so much with it. And Ashleigh, you were talking about it too. Like, you got onto that right away too, about how cool that was, right?
Yeah, I've had similar reactions where people reached out and were like, I've seen you started a podcast. That's so great. I love listening to it. I have thought about starting one and just have never gotten off the fence about it. And it's really interesting because sometimes you think like, why would they come to me for advice? We're 8 episodes? I think this is episode 8.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we are such beginners in my mind. And I know we're still doing things like, quote unquote, the incorrect way. But sometimes like you don't want the advice from the person who's already at 30,000 feet, because their advice is like so far beyond what you're ready to hear. Right. So it's been really interesting because people really are interested in like, how did you get off the fence about doing it? Like, what are the basics? And that I'm like,
if you are listened to episode 1.
How did we get off the fence? We decided to do it, and then I get some weird like hit of something when I'm in airports, and I texted them, was like, pick a date, we have to release on that date.
Yeah. And I remember you're at the airport and you're just like, nope, we're committing to this date. And it was like, sure, it's all fun and games to be like, yeah, we'll do it. And then trying to like pick a time. And then like, we thought we were going to do it on Zoom, and then we switched platforms and we're like, I don't even know how to use this. We're on somebody else's account. We don't even have one yet. Like, what's good? So yeah, I think that's been like the idea that you're talking about today of like your impact. And we've talked about like, who am I to provide impact? But sometimes impact is these little tiny micro level things that people need. And we get to help people with that. And like Katie said, if nothing else, it is so cool to get time with you both on this podcast has been my number one favorite. And then that close second has been the people reaching out to say, thank you for providing like this and reaching out to me and connecting about how do I get started.
Yeah, and I have to say before we move on, the laugh that we just shared about how rocky it is starting, and like Ashleigh said, we were using Biz's husband's account for this platform because we knew nothing about it. And Ashleigh and I edit the episodes, and Biz emailed Ashleigh an episode, and it was only the recording of Ashleigh's voice.
That's right.
Actually talking to herself.
Ashleigh was like, "It's only me."
Real?
He was like, guys, I don't know what's wrong with this, but it's just me.
I want a blooper reel soon. It's
Oh
coming.
my gosh. Remember
Yeah.
how long at first we were like, we recorded it and then you have to save your download? And we were waiting for 45 minutes for it to save. We didn't know what we were doing wrong.
We don't, and like, oh yeah. And then I kind of like was like, oh, we're gonna get to hang out, like, you know, and then it's like now, like we've like really got it down. Like we really
yeah.
do. Like, I mean,
Except for
our
today.
editing is
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Sometimes
like
we
go
show up and
us.
We're
Go
like, there's
us.
an appointment here. I've got to go. I've got a hard stop. And like, we jump right in, we record, and we are like, okay, love you. Bye.
Yeah. You know what I really loved about us too is like I think it was your idea, Ashleigh, about each one of us committing to being 1% better in whatever avenue we individually thought we needed to improve on. And like I just thought that was really cool. And I feel like each episode we do like it's signs that we're doing that. And I love that.
Well, I think it also takes a little bit away from the I think the natural thing is to listen to yourself back and criticize yourself. And when you can do it purposefully. So when I listen to it and I'm not like, oh, I hate that I said that, or I hate that I did this, or I talk so slow. I'm listening for, okay, what's my project out of what I took from this week? Like, what's my project? What can I work on? And it's been really fun to think of it both for ourselves and as a group, how we can improve. And Biz, I love that I promised everybody listening, this isn't just us gushing about ourselves this week.
I'm kind of thinking that too. I'm like, ooh, but you know, no, it isn't. It's not.
Biz said, you know, that we should stop and look at the impact that we've made. And my immediate response was, ooh, we're so new. Like that's maybe in a year. Let's look back at the cool things that we've done. And then we kind of talked about it a little more. And I also started thinking about, Ashleigh, a couple weeks ago, you talked about people not celebrating their wins along the way because they're just focused on the destination, how we lose a lot of happiness. And I was very vocal about the fact that I think people should celebrate their wins. And so then I started thinking about it and I was like, you know what? We are new and this is such a little baby podcast and we've had a lot of wins. And why shouldn't we pause? And if people are saying that things that we're doing are prompting them to take action, let's talk about what's happening so that they can take action and prompt more people to do things.
Yeah.
You can do it. It's magic. It's magical. It is so magical. And like really, you know, Katie, the vulnerable bit there in the conversation that we had that I do want to talk about. And so, yeah, actually, Katie, if I could just be vulnerable here for a minute about it, right? Like the biggest thing for me with creating this podcast was listening back. I think it was the first episode or the second or third episode, listening back to it. And, you know, we record these with video, right? Like newsflash, but we also, we record
They
with
will
video.
They will never see the light of day.
They will never. Yeah, no. But it's really, you know, so we can talk to each other. And sometimes whenever we're talking, right, like I'll go into this lie that I don't have anything of value to say, or I don't have as much value to say and bring. And it's that imposter syndrome. So I literally spiraled to where I lost my train of thought, as I do, and you guys know and love me through every time it happens. And I literally lost my train of thought when I was saying something that was great. And and I spiraled so bad that I derailed y'all. And then I got embarrassed about it. And I literally sunk into a hole for like 3 minutes. And even in that episode, if you find it, like Katie left in there when she was editing, I can't, y'all talk. And I actually like really love the fact that you left that in there, because it shows like the rawness of our relationship and the real support. But the key to that, though, the real magic was when I watched it back. And it was so fresh in my mind that I could remember the lie that I was seeding in my brain of how like, y'all are so much smarter than me. Like, shut up, Biz. Like, let them talk. Like, this isn't about you. Like, quit being so vain. Like, all of those horrible things that was coming out of my head. Like, shut up, And it's like, I watched it back on video and I watched myself lose it. And and it was incredible because I realized for myself that the lie that I was seeding was wrong. And it wasn't y'all telling me it was freaking wrong. It was my own self and my own freaking words. And I am like, oh my God, like, this is why they're my friends. Like, what the fuck, Biz? And I literally had that moment with myself, as like sincerely as that is. And, we talk about personal growth and whatnot and how important it is for you to make those revelations for yourself. And I never thought in a million years that would come out of it. I mean, I literally never thought in a million years. And it's honestly, it's completely changed my worldview for myself. In like a really, really wonderful way.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And that, like, honestly, it's changed it too in a way, like Katie, in the way I introduce myself.
Yeah.
Like when we talk about the podcast now, because people, like, you have friends that, Facebook is great, man. Like, I love whenever like one of Ashleigh's friends like comments and says something, and then it's like, like,
I have a new friend.
I know. It's like, oh, hi, thanks, friend. It's like my favorite thing ever. But I've really also taken to heart that whenever when I'm introducing myself to someone, like thinking about what I would feel like if the person, like putting myself in that other person's shoes and like being more mindful of that, like you said, to empower the other person.
Yeah.
Like that was a really, really big takeaway for me too.
Yeah.
With it. What about you, Ashleigh? Or is there any like direct nugget that you've taken out?
Direct nuggets, I think, has been, being kind of similar with you, being a little less harsh on myself on the listen back, especially when I'm running through an edit. I'm so focused on the three of us and our whole conversation and trying to catch where is there something I can bring out that will make this podcast play better, or where is there a break that we need, we had to run and get something to drink or, whatever. And so I can't just zero in on myself during that time and criticize myself. I'm thinking of it almost like I'm a third person. And it's given me a very interesting perspective on it. In that, I'm more objective and able to just enjoy the conversation. Whereas when we're in the conversation, there's, some internal pressure to be like listening and then making sure that you're not using too many ums or buts or whatever. And you're not always fully hearing everything that you two are saying. And so sometimes getting to listen back and then really take that in is awesome.
Yeah.
My listening skills hardcore too. I am like real talk, like how important it is to let others speak all the way through, right? Because like just in our conversations, like we talk all the time. And so like some of the like business principles we throw around, right? Like we just almost speak in shorthand where we go very quickly. And it's been a really great exercise in making sure the person completely finishes their thought. And so I catch myself in that in the recording. And it's like interesting to be specifically mindful, right? Because you also want to like make sure it's not dead air. Right. Like, but yeah, so I guess that's like a real life example there. Like we're stumbling through that too. You're right. Yeah, with it. But you're right with it, the getting better for me too. Katie, is it helping you?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's also, so it's funny because when I speak, in front of people or teach a class, you know, I'm pretty mindful and you're kind of on. And it's been interesting to me to listen back to this and realize that I've been treating this truly as conversations with friends, which I think I do so that I am more prone to open up and be really vulnerable. And not that I don't do that when I teach, but I just kind of let, like, if I need to change course in the middle of something, I do. And so in some ways it's really painful because I listen back and like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to everybody. I speak very slowly. The very first week, when my husband listened through, I sent him the link and I was like, it's live. I know I said like about 8,000 times in the first episode. And that is my 1% probably every week. And I think that the listening thing, it's funny that you bring that up because it's such a dance that we have to do. It's easier for me to leave dead space because I know I can just edit it out or whatever. And we have to keep it engaging, right? And this is kind of, I think Ashleigh, you were talking about how people get this false sense of community from online, and interacting in DMs or text is so easy because empty white space isn't a thing because people might not be busy or might not see their phone and the conversation doesn't necessarily move really quickly. But when you're having a live conversation, you still have to be engaged and get the moment, and you have to be able to, you know, like we all keep a notepad so that we can write down our thoughts so that the other person can speak, and then we can still get everything out because it does really prompt things in the spur of the moment. So yeah, it's been a really interesting hearing back what I have to say, or some things I'm like, man, I really meant to say this one thing and I even had it written down. But I could do a whole episode on that. So I canned it, you know?
Well, or you put it on the Trello board and like,
or I put it on the Trello board.
Yeah. And I think maybe it's time for us to kind of try to flesh out some of those ideas in the Facebook community too. Yeah. To kind of talk about it there. But it's really, I'm glad that in our few episodes that we've done already, we talked about showing up as our best selves to multiple people. Yeah. And how, like, because we already talked about that, right? Like how that was a little uncomfortable for us here in the podcast. And right after we had that conversation, I actually got a business referral from someone affiliated with my kid's school. Yeah. And I had no idea that they were really listening to my podcast. And it was a total like deer in headlights moment of like, oh shit, like you really just heard me cuss a lot, and like you just heard me really cuss a lot, and you connected me to someone, and you told them about my podcast already. So by the first time I talked to her, it was like the first time in my life that I talked to someone who had like listened to us before I, whatever. And like that was really powerful for me on a personal level, just to like know that whole thirds thing that I talk about actually works.
Well, and that's such a great point because so it took me a while to actually identify what I was feeling, because I was obviously very excited to start this and obviously very excited to hang out with y'all even more and have like dedicated time to talk. And there was something I was feeling and I couldn't really figure out what it was because it's not an emotion I have very often. But I had this internal embarrassment because so many people start a podcast and then they don't do anything with it or it goes away. And I didn't want people to think like, oh, Katie's going through another crisis and just starting a podcast and she has nothing important to say. And Totally. And so I wasn't embarrassed to partner with y'all or to say the things that we have to say. I think I was almost embarrassed that people would think I was self-important or something. And yet I knew that the conversations that we have speak so deeply to us that if nothing else, it'll help us, and if it helps other people along the way. And I just kind of live with this feeling, and I am working on it. And I know where it comes from, but I live with this feeling that everything that I attempt to do, people just kind of go, oh, that's cute. Like, look at her trying. And not at all.
I'm like,
resonates
okay,
so
can I
deeply
invest
with
in
me.
that? I'm like, hold on.
I was gonna say, people are always like, so that's what she's up to now. We'll see.
Ah.
That's what I always think people are thinking. They're like, okay,
Yeah.
Ashleigh. So
And-
same.
And so I was like, okay, you know, I told the other day, I told a group chat, you know, I hope that people describe me, like my dream is for people to describe me as, oh, she's a homie and I'm a little scared of her or something like that. I was like,
Nice.
there are some people I can threaten into listening to this, you know, and that'll be it. The number of moms who have reached out to me because of things that we have said on this podcast that I have maybe had a conversation with before, maybe met at a conference, maybe don't know at all, but they reach out and say that something that we spoke made them feel reaffirmed or encouraged, or they laughed and they hadn't had like a good laugh that day, has been a really great lesson and reminder to me that like, nope, Biz, you say it all the time that I'm super clear on what I say yes and no to. And if I am at the point where I'm saying yes to something, I shouldn't feel embarrassed like at all.
Yeah.
Nope. And it's like what I like the big picture in it. Hold on, I lost it. It's gone again. God dang it.
I was going to say something about with the podcast that I wasn't expecting is how uncomfortable it would make me feel at times. And I expected the launch of it to be uncomfortable. I expected us to pick topics that sometimes I didn't feel like a very big expert on, and to that would be uncomfortable. But sometimes just our personal conversations where it's like we have an opportunity to interview some name that I'm like, that doesn't feel like that should happen to us, especially as new as we are, or like, you know, we can get eventually some sort of, you know, all these different things we've been talking about, like doing a Facebook community. And it's like uncomfortable because at first I'm like, I don't want to do more. Like doing more seems hard right now. But then when I sit with it a while, I'm like, no, I'm not uncomfortable doing more. I'm uncomfortable because I'm afraid I don't have value.
Oh, that makes me feel so loved to hear you say that, Ashleigh.
It is blowing my mind to hear that come out of your mouth.
I feel so seen. Like, I know that I can't believe we're even talking about this right now. I'm going to lean into it 100%. But that entire conversation, I think for all of us, like each of us came to some personal, like deep realization of like, what?
Yeah, teaser. We're not announcing who, but there's going to be some exciting stuff later.
Yeah,
I think our 22nd episode,
Yeah,
somewhere in
Is
there.
Mm-hmm.
I also just realized that there's a chat feature in this new thing, and so I can make notes for myself from now on, so I won't lose track. Super excited about that, guys. So what I was saying was how it's examples of the thirds that I keep saying, and it's scary, right? It's scary for me every time I go into a room to say, all right, a third of these people are going to love me, a third of them are going to hate me, and a third of them are figuring out. And that if you focus your energy on the third that, you know, will, then the third in the middle is going to be more attracted to you and you're going to have a better time. And this podcast to me is such a representation. And that when I say like, oh, it worked, like, you know, it's proving that that's what that connection did. Because I would have never thought to have shown up as my cousin, you know, female entrepreneur bestie in that environment. And yet there were still people out there, you know, that were attracted to it, and it worked. And so like it worked, and it's working so much for us in the sense that like there with that, because like you said, you just got to know. Katie's right, y'all. You just got to know. And like, Katie, you're right. You know, you're right. And you're proving it to yourself too. God, I can't wait for you to listen to this back. Ooh, it's going to be good. You know, like that's my favorite thing too, is like having the tools like for myself to listen to it back. Right. Like it's so cool.
I know.
And then also like something, Ashleigh, you were saying, like you have really helped me with holding space for stuff. And like when, like, honestly, sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, I got to get through this. And you almost are like, oh, okay, no, like, let's sit here for a minute. We're waddling. I got you, buddy. we waddling. We're not rushing. We're waddling. And like you literally, like y'all wouldn't let me rush. Like you made me waddle. You waddled with me the other day.
Literally yesterday, Biz goes, I don't need a friend right now. I just need to vent something real quick. And Ashleigh and I were both like, well, too bad.
We did. It was and it was God, like my entire day got turned around too. Like, and it just goes to show, like, it is like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't drown when it's on your calendar not to.
I know. I love that.
Like, it's the truth. But you literally put this podcast recording time for me on my calendar because you know how crazy and stressed my week was last week when we were like having to schedule this time, which like also like we're being really humble about that by not talking about it. Like it is hard AF with the three of our schedules.
Yeah.
And Katie going to freaking Paris on 3 weeks notice. Like, you
Three
know,
different time
and
zones.
losing her voice for like a whole freaking week before she went to Paris on 3 weeks notice.
Yeah. I mean, we all are.
You can't also things you can't control. I mean, but like, I mean, it's been intense, but it goes on your
We're all
calendar.
moms. We're all business owners. We all have various side projects with things. We're all trying to also enjoy our lives a little bit.
What is that?
3 time zones. And
Yeah.
so when it's like 12 my time, so that's 2 Katie's time, but Biz, that's 1 your time. But wait, what day are we talking about?
It's not 10 a.m. my time.
Not 10 a.m.
Even though my calendar said yes.
Yeah. Hashtag thanks Calendly, sponsor us. I love that, man. We should totally hit up Calendly on that list. Sidebar.
You know what's funny, Biz, is the first time on this podcast you brought up that idea of the room of thirds. You know, we said this in our chat the other day. Feel free to take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And I'm such a big fan of that because you'd said that the first time, and I was like, you know, I'm not really feeling like that speaks to me right now. And now I'm starting to feel like it is, mostly in that before I almost wanted to just ignore the fact that there's going to be people that don't like me because I'm like, I can convince them to. Like they'll come around. And now I'm almost like, you know what? It's okay to have people that don't accept you, don't resonate with you, don't like you, whatever it is. And it's almost like important because if I'm not speaking directly to people that will attract themselves to like my aura or my vibe, whatever you want to call it, then I'm too middle of the road.
Yep.
And that's why I don't have people that don't like me. Like that, you know, you can't just ride the fence all the time. You just can't.
People like you deeply because you are saying something that so radically speaks to them and they've never felt like somebody like Biz, you just did it. Ashleigh said something and you said, I feel so seen or I feel so heard, right? We could do a podcast where we don't get vulnerable at all and worry about everybody liking us or thinking that it's the most valuable thing they've ever heard. But like one of the most impactful things in my life is I talked about that mom group that I have, that Facebook chat. I swear to you, for the first 6 months of my son's life, at least weekly, I would sob and send them messages and be like, I didn't know that I needed people to connect with like this. I didn't know that I needed somebody to specifically see this part of me, acknowledge it, validate it, be there, understand it on like a different level. I had just no idea. And that one group chat has changed my view on female friendships for me because I grew up mostly with guy friends because I had 2 brothers, but also just the human connection and experience. And I think that that really shaped a lot of like, I don't have to only be vulnerable in front of my closest friends. I mean, obviously that's the easiest, but it's really, really important to show other people like representation is important. And it's really important to give people the feeling of like, somebody somewhere will see me.
Yep.
You know? Do y'all know? Okay, this is like so cool for me because I have always like I've teetered on the opposite side of the seesaw of being too vulnerable and not knowing how to protect myself. from that. And so like to me, it's been difficult to like learn how to put up boundaries around my vulnerability or to be intentional with my vulnerability. And so like this podcast has like been really big on reeling it in and like me being conscious of when it's spouting out. And it's like really cool to listen to both of you guys kind of talk about how you see like the strength in it. With it coming around like that. Like I wasn't expecting this is like genuine ass live reaction right here. Like I'm like so happy.
I wish everybody could see Biz's face.
Yeah, well, it's like, this is where our friendships come from. It's from like our vulnerable conversations that we have, and like why I knew it had to be y'all. And so like it's just so cool. It's so cool. Okay, thanks. You can choose to edit that out if you want to, but I just said it. Okay.
Well, it's funny because Biz like mentioning that you have to be intentional to reel back your vulnerability on the podcast. And I think it's important to clarify it's not because you aren't comfortable sharing that, because obviously there's times we share things with each other that we're very comfortable talking about. Yeah. And then we edit things out because, you know, there's at a certain level, it can become trauma dumping. And when you're talking about a podcast where you don't know who's going to always hear something, you're like, well, if we talk about something at this level of intensity without warnings or without it being the topic, people can't avoid their triggers or things like that. And there's just some level of, you know, when this is on a public broadcasting, I know this is in our minds a baby podcast, but I think being on the internet has taught me one thing, and that is you cannot control how many people will hear something you put out there, and you can't control when that'll happen.
Nope.
So
we're in 5 countries.
We are in 5 countries. Like it's
and we're still pulling the lever.
So you have to be, and it's not so much like, oh, I have to control my vulnerability, but it's a mindfulness.
Yeah, for me, it's like a time and place thing. And honestly, it is a controlling it for me, because I think I can almost be too much with it sometimes.
Not for us,
sometimes. Well, I appreciate that, Ashleigh, and maybe I'll sit with that. I will. Please keep this here. I'm gonna sit with it and go back and challenge myself to go into that thirds. But this is just, you know, vulnerability again. Like the season of life that I'm in right now is redefining boundaries in a lot of areas of my life. And that's what I'm saying. It's been helpful, the phrasing and the framing of the podcast, like you're saying, it's been really helpful.
Well, and I think there's something to say too, Biz, on that line for we do get really comfortable with each other, and we are really open to other people hearing that, because I think that there's a lot of value in people seeing a model of what friendship looks like. And as these are not pre-scripted episodes. We are genuinely working through things together. We are just basically recording our friendship. And sometimes it's not even that it's too vulnerable that you're uncomfortable sharing that side of you. But I know that we've both shared things that like, it's a conversation that maybe somebody else deserves to hear from me first privately, or they'll know that I'm talking about them and I'm not quite ready to have that conversation yet, or I'm still sorting out my thoughts. And I don't really want it to come across in a podcast that they hear it and feel that I meant it some type of way or didn't do them the courtesy of having a conversation, or I'm still figuring out like what it looks like. And so, you know, we just clip those parts out sometimes because I don't know that it's being too vulnerable. I think that it's like a courtesy to the people around us that, you know, we aren't like dumping on them for conversations that like it's not the time or place to have them. Here's what I think we're saying, right? Is that this isn't like some self-glorifying episode of like, we're so awesome, we did this thing. Here's what we're saying is that this was an idea that Biz had that she brought to us that we were so excited about. And we realized that there was potential of like, hey, people need community. We're good community builders for reasons that I'm sure we will get into later. Like we've all moved in our adult lives. We've all had to rebuild community. And the point here being, we're such a baby podcast, right? We're new still. We're learning still. And we've been so shocked and encouraged at all of the positive feedback that we've gotten. And
Yep.
I think that we're so used to, in the entrepreneurial space, you constantly think about this grind and this long grind and how you have to put in so much unseen work before you get results, or you're always looking towards the next goal or whatever. And we even talked about this before, you focus on your shortcomings. And I'm telling you, I'm not trying to say that this is some like quick fix or instant gratification, but sometimes when things are on your heart like that and you know that it's a step that you're supposed to take, the impact will go much further than you think, and you may not see all of it, but you should take the step. You should, because the number of people who have reached out to us by something that we want to make a good impact, and also we weren't taking time to like nurture our own, like this is really as good for us as it is for anybody listening. Take the step and do the thing, and be okay if you don't see the results right away, but you may. This is not the, I mean, it is a long game. We will continue to do this, but this isn't like everything else that we're used to of like, okay, maybe in a year we'll see something from this. You know, this is very like your impact matters and it's important, and it's okay for you to acknowledge that.
Boom.
Totally. And I love that here, this podcast itself has turned into the proof, right? That I love that the more that we do, the more that we lean in, the more that we're reinforcing our community together with it. And I'm gonna hold us accountable. I think before we drop this episode, we need to have the Facebook community growing it and some stuff there for topics. Because I want to talk to people. I want to engage, because like it really is so fun whenever one of your friends comes around and like says something. And then I'm like, oh yeah. Because as I'm telling people about my podcast, like I'm telling them, I'm like, oh my God, you got to talk to my friend Katie. Like my friend Katie is like so cool. Or like, no, Ashleigh said this the other day. And it's like, I literally am like referencing it back. And so I want to introduce. I'm going to have a place to introduce and like make our Venn diagram. Yeah.
I almost wish we could have people like everybody could just be on the podcast with us.
We could do an event where like we could do an event or a giveaway where that's the thing. But Biz, to your point, like I was out with some friends up here, and my friend Brittany, she listens, and every week she texts me. She's like, oh my gosh, I'm like sitting at my desk crying, listening or whatever. And I mentioned a work conference, and she cut me off mid-sentence, and she goes, are Biz and Ashleigh going to be there? Oh, I think so. I was like, this is so fun.
Maybe we should do like a happy hour together. Like just do that. Maybe we should do that. I don't know. Let's talk about it.
Fun.
Yeah. We should for sure do something. But yeah, I just really want to encourage people to, you know, like open up your world a little bit, because people need to see it. And, you know, like we talked about, my love language is words of affirmation. And I won't name their name, but I felt really bad because the other day somebody actually messaged me. And you know how on Facebook you can see the preview of the message. I couldn't even open it up all the way for 7 hours because I didn't want her to see me read it and think that I was ignoring it. But just the first 2 lines made me cry all day long, because she was sharing personal experience about something that we had said and how it touched her. And I was like, I cannot, I cannot stop crying enough to like process a response to her. I did eventually.
I can't, there's not an audible sound for that reaction. Because like, oh man. Wow. Thank you, person. Thank you for messaging Katie.
It was
Thank
really
you
great.
for being brave enough to say something back to her, because that is such encouragement to her. And that's like the thing. Anytime somebody says something, I'm like, wow, like, thank you for your encouragement. Because like, it's scary sometimes to even just say, hey, that helped, you know?
Yeah.
So like, just because people aren't saying it don't mean it's not happening. And so just do it for you. And there's going to be happy consequences. There's going to be tons of serendipity. You guys, serendipity is like my favorite thing ever. There's tons of serendipity and doing things that you feel scared about. And like Katie said, like stuff that if it aligns with your mission, and in my case, if it like when you're deciding with time too, we talked about this, like if it if it goes into multiple buckets. So for us, it's checking in with our friends, like accountability for our business goals, accountability for our parenting, right? Like boundary setting is a big one for me that I'm leaning on them for right now, but it changes, it changes. And that's what I really hope continues to go and happen with our podcast, is that it continues to change and grow and flow like our lives do. And we'll do another one of these check-ins periodically as stuff happens. I mean, I feel like once our bucket gets full, we should dump it and make some room.
Pour from the saucer. It's our quarterly progress report. I would say, though, that on that note, Biz, of like anybody who is listening to this, whether it's us or somebody else, if somebody has said something that has personally made you pause or feel better or laugh or positively impacted your life, take a moment and share it with them, because it really does. I know not everybody's love language is words of affirmation, so they may not turn into a puddle instantly like I do, but it really, really will help them and encourage them. And, just the world needs some more of that.
Yep.
100%.
And I'd say as people join our Facebook community, they have to say something nice about somebody else that's in it.
All right.
That's my rule.
Gauntlet drop. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I love you guys. Thank you for this.
I love you.
I love you.
I know.
This was fun.
Go us. Y'all have a great day.